Hello, everyone, and welcome to day two of the Island Finance Forum 2023. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Kata Magyar, and I'm the Director of Events here at Island Innovation. Island Innovation is a global network and creative agency helping advance innovation and drive sustainable change across island communities worldwide. Please visit islandinnovation.co to learn more about our network and our services. I'm very happy to be presenting this session, Financing the Renewable Energy Transition in Islands. Before we begin, you should see a poll that will appear now on your screen. Please let us know where you are connecting from and the sector and industry you belong to. I expect, yes, to be a lot of people from Europe and from Asia. Oh, but someone is joining from Caribbean. Thank you so much for getting up so early for us. Yeah, but mainly it's from Asia Pacific area, and private sector is winning so far, almost with 50%. But of course, we have people joining from academia, NGO, government, and other sectors. And that's also what Island Innovation is doing, creating the bridge across all these sectors. I invite you to choose to use the chat function to introduce yourself and where you are joining from and make any comments during the session. Please make sure that you use the Q&A function for your questions, and we will do our best to make sure that we can address as many as possible. Yes. I would like to introduce you to our moderator today, James Alsmore. Oh, I'm sorry, we just had the moderator. Ellen Cho, the founder of Radical China. Please turn your camera on and join me on screen. Thank you again for being part of this year's Island Finance Forum, and I will now hand over to our moderator, Ellen Cho.
Alan, you're on mute.
There you go.
Yes.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hey, how are you? Good. Good morning and good afternoon from Shanghai. I'm actually at the Shanghai Auto Show. It's been nuts trying to get online, but we're definitely here and ready to give some interesting insights about energy transformation. And the reason why we're here is obviously to talk about how finance is needed for energy transformation everywhere, especially on the islands, because it's such a secluded paradises that are very hard to get resources such as energy resources, especially in terms of petroleum and coal and all the natural resources if you don't have it. So we're very glad to be here to sort of share some insights about what we can do in terms of helping islands to be better prepared or to be better financed in terms of the energy transformation, which is obviously needed if we're going to reach the goals of carbon neutrality and carbon carbon peak. So my background is the head of Radical. We are a early stage fund of funds in terms of hydrogen technology, and the idea is to fund early stage technology that is going to be obviously helpful to places like islands around the world. So today we have some extremely versed and well experienced speakers with us, and they will share with us some of the ways that they've looked at how islands are transforming its power dynamic and the power in terms of usage. And let me just get to the, I can't, are we, let's go on. I'm not seeing any of this. So here we go. So the first speaker we have is Dr. Mike Allen, who is the head of renewables for the country of New Zealand, and who is obviously an expert in terms of helping such a big island to transform its energy usage. Dr. Allen, would you like to just kick it off, since we had a conversation about how we're going to get right into the pain points?
Thanks, Alan, and thanks to Island Innovation for the opportunity to join you. I think that I'm not going to talk about New Zealand and my background, but more about my personal experience, I guess, initially. As you've probably noted from my bio, I'm involved with IRENA, and I've had quite a lot of contact with SIDS and the excellent work that IRENA does, and I know that Arietta will be speaking more specifically about that. But I have had experience in the Pacific. A couple of years ago, I did a review of all of the utilities operating in the Pacific, and there's some 40 of those, and the potential opportunities for private sector investment and participation. I've worked in the Caribbean. I have a long background in geothermal, and I've been involved there. And I've also done some work in Comoros on behalf of the New Zealand government and the government of Comoros. But what I wanted to do, and the two Pauls and I spoke yesterday, is to do a bit of quick background on what I think the situation is in islands. Obviously, as Alan has already said, you know, islands are small. Many of them in the Pacific and the Caribbean are relatively remote. And so we know that, you know, there are some fundamental challenges. One is, of course, that islands have relatively low installed capacity because of the small population. And so this presents its own challenges, and not only from, I guess, attracting investment, but also that with each new development, the scale of development is relatively small and restricted. So we have to think about the financing that we can attract that will recognize this, and also the fact that island nations, because of their remoteness, have challenges around the, you know, the operations and maintenance of plant, and with the small scale, coping with the intermittency of the renewable energies, which we're obviously trying to promote. And I guess in the island nations, it'd be fair to say that solar PV is quite prevalent. So the technical questions around grid stability and other things need to be well addressed. I think there's an underlying issue too about the utilities that exist in the island nations, not challenging the ownership situation, because sometimes that's been challenged by existing governments in the history of the way in which they were established. But the fact is that these utilities are quite fragile, where you have a relatively small installed capacity. If there is any private sector investment, it needs to be done in collaboration with the utility, because it's key that there's an integration and working together to move forward. If you set up independent private power supplies in small islands, you can very easily undermine the commercial reality or the commercial viability of the utilities, and that then leads to problems that we probably haven't anticipated. So bringing in IPPs, bringing in private sector finance is what we're all trying to do, but it does have to be done within a realistic environment, as I say, reflecting on what the utilities have in place. This is tending to mean that we are looking still to bring in blended finance. We need to have the public sector involved to some extent, and we need to attract the private sector. So how best to do that? And both Paul Van Alst and Paul Makumbe, who's going to speak after me, can speak even more eloquently about that and the importance of it. Similarly, because of the small population, perhaps the lack of experience in the islands, there's a need for the project preparation and bringing projects through to the bankable stage, and how best to do that is a real challenge. And that's something that Paul Van Alst will talk to you about in a few moments. The fundamental issues for many islands, of course, is that they're very dependent on diesel fuel and have been for many years. Moving away from that is what we're trying to do, but we also have to recognize that there's a level of comfort and security that long-term experience with diesel generation provides. So the opportunity to bring in hybrids and other things into islands is key, and to be realistic about how quickly we can move away from the diesel dependency, but also reflecting on the considerable economic benefit that this movement will bring to the island nations in terms of foreign currency and their expenditure. And many of the island states, of course, have suffered very badly during the pandemic, have lost a number of years of tourism, and so their economies have been very badly battered, and they've lost a lot of foreign exchange earning capabilities. So I think that's probably where I want to leave it at the moment, and happy to answer questions. And again, thank you to Alan and the group for the opportunity to speak.
Well, thanks, Dr. Mike, Dr. Allen. So we have, if you have any questions, please leave or put your questions in the Q&A section, and then we'll try to answer it as we get closer to the end of the program. So Tova Elst from Get, are you online, Mr. Elst?
Good morning, Alan. Yes, I'm definitely online.
Hey, good morning. How are you? Yeah, please, give us the skinny on why it's so hard to finance these really independent renewable projects in on these islands.
Well, to give you the secret, is not that difficult. It can be done, and the program that I am an advisor of is, in fact, providing support in doing that. Do I share my screen right now? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good. So, Alan and friends, in this session, I'm happy to present the Get Invest program to you. We are an advisory program with associated services to make renewable energy transition in island states happen. We're a European program funded by several states, European Union, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Austria. And we provide all kinds of services, information sharing, market development, and transaction advice to clean energy companies in Africa, the Pacific, and the Caribbean. We've been doing so for the last 7 years, and we've successfully advised in our team more than 300 clients across the board of the business models and the technologies. And we're happy to extend our services to the Pacific and the Caribbean region, as well as to island states in and around Africa. Next to our advisory services, we also have a huge database which you can visit on our website, which provides you information about all kinds of financiers that we work with. And if I can flip to the next slide, which, there you go. You can see that we will provide services ranging from improving your business case, making and presenting financial models, finding the right financier, and just to be precise, those financiers can be debt and equity providers, since we basically support private sectors, but can also be grants to further develop your business plan so that it eventually can be invested in, for example, by funds like Paul Makamba is leading. To your point, Alan, obviously all the projects in island states are confronted with the fact that there's a relatively small scale and that they are fairly remote for all kinds of reasons that causes some complexities. But at the same time, renewable energy, as Mike alluded to, is a very strong business case in all island states for the obvious reason that you would save a lot of money, and that most island states are endowed with a very strong renewable energy base, be it solar, be it hydro, be it ocean energy, and even waste energy can be found. So we have seen a rather successful conversion rate of initiatives, be it a concept notes or business plans, into actually being funded. And if I flip my slide, there you go. So we've seen a client in the Caribbean, in Barbados, working with green hydrogen, which is also something we are looking at in the Pacific. As you can imagine, green hydrogen is not a small ticket, it's not a cookie cutter kind of business. But if you apply the experience that we have, and if you have a proper team, green hydrogen can be done in island states, particularly if there's a link to endowments such as geothermal or the vast ocean energy and solar energy. We think that green hydrogen can be done. But as you see in the picture, we also see commercial rooftops happening. Commercial rooftops are very interesting since they often can operate within the existing regulatory framework, which oftentimes is an issue in terms of taking time to change when you develop your project. So rooftop solar for commercial purposes is an often seen solution that we've been advising on, and that we've also been connecting the developers with the development banks so that everybody understands the levers and the assumptions behind those business plans and that they can be funded. And on top of that, we very recently have seen a number of electrical vehicle programs starting, all the way from chargers that are used privately to electrical buses for public transport, and obviously the importation of electrical vehicles. So, Alan, while there are specific conditions in island states, we are very convinced that if you apply the proper experience, if you bundle projects to the extent possible, but within the limits, and if you share the proper assumptions to financiers, that this is a region in the world that can be helped in developing renewable energy projects really quickly and really successfully. And with the experience in our team, where we provide these free of cost services, we are keen to extend that sort of service to clients. And this is our website, where you can find the link for applications, which you can do online, and we would then be happy to review those. I think that's the most important thing I wanted to share, which is that this is a situation where you can do business. It's possible. We've done it. And if you are a qualified entrepreneur, please do apply for our services, and we'd be happy to extend our support. And maybe I may hand back to you then, Alan, and then Paul could bring in the other Paul could bring in his contribution from a fund manager's point of view.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. That was wonderful. Yeah. So next we have Paul Makumbe from Camco Pacific Region. Paul, are you online?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Makumbe. I'm Regional Director for Camco. Camco is Climate and Impact Fund Manager. We are currently working in the Pacific effectively to set up a renewable energy fund, a blended facility called TIDES, that we are working with a number of DFIs to try and put together. The way the fund is structured is that it is a blended facility with a 20% first loss supported by grant funding from governments. And it's really designed to try and encourage private sector investment into a fund. So it's 20% first loss, 65% debt, and 15% equity. Alongside that, we're putting together what we call a market development facility, which is a $30 million facility to work alongside the work that Paul Van Ast is doing, which is a TA facility, a development facility. And the reason that we have these there is to ensure that these projects that Paul's talked about actually get to financial close. And then the other part that we're working on is as an RBF, which is part of that $30 million market development facility. That's a results-based facility that is designed to ensure that rural electrification projects we breach a viability gap and attract participation at that level. So in a nutshell, that is a description of the fund. Now, if I go back and touching on what Alan talked about, Dr. Mark Allen talked about earlier on, in terms of, one, describing the Pacific, in terms of, what is the market potential of the Pacific, what is the structure of that market potential, and what are the kind of things to watch out for, like ensuring that the markets that we operate in, the utilities that we engage with, actually remain viable. So the way that we designed Tides was effectively to try and take into account the specific elements that we've seen in the Pacific. One, small deal sizes, and you got small deal sizes. So we wanted to come up with a fund that could allow us to, one, to aggregate projects, and secondly, the time to get what you call grant funding takes such a long time. And when you think about that, what we wanted to do was to try and have a fund that enabled us to write a number of deals and get what we call velocity of deal flow to ensure that those deals actually happen. So you're not waiting a year or two to fund a 200 kilowatt system. We actually, in a year or two, hoping that we can do 2 to 3 megawatts of 200 kilowatt systems across the region. And what we also wanted to do was, when we looked at the design of Tides, we looked at, what are the other impediments that you see? So we talked about small deal size. And then the other real impediment is the capacity and capability to deliver these projects, right? So when you think about the Pacific as it is today, the number of private sector developers who are able to actually, one, generate a project, develop it, sign an IPP with a utility is very small. So part of what we've got that market development facility for is to enable us to actually build the capacity and capability so that when we go into countries and are funding projects, that those projects are actually being done by local developers, local teams that are developing, local teams that are building it, and local teams that eventually will own and operate those assets that we're financing. And then the other part that we looked at when you look at what we're trying to achieve with Tides is over the past 12 years of doing renewable energy projects in the Pacific, there's been very few private sector investment. And what we've tried to do, having it as a blended facility, is to try and encourage private sector investment, not necessarily always outside of the Pacific, but also from internal sources within the Pacific itself. A lot of the pension funds in the Pacific have expressed an interest and a desire to invest in infrastructure projects, specifically in renewables, but haven't had a vehicle which they could do that through. So a lot of our work is not only just bringing finance into the Pacific, but is also, providing an avenue for Pacific investors to invest in their own assets that they will own in the long run. Okay. I think I'll leave it at that, and then we can possibly go to questions, Alan, if that's okay.
Thank you very much. That was, wonderful insights about. I mean, end of the day is that we're trying to do. Sometimes it seems like mission impossible when it comes down to working with small entities around the world. Right? I'm in China. We're fully rolled out on many renewables. Everybody knows, and it just seems like even in a situation where we've got all the resources, we're not really pushing as fast as we should. And that is something we can all work on, is we can have the manufacturing capability for solar, for wind, for any, and what I work on, which is hydrogen, is to be able to get those hardware and software to the places that's needed, right? And islands are probably the most sort of the most poignant, because one is that you just have such limited resources, and with the amount of transportation that's needed to get everything to an island, why don't we just make it more self-sustainable, right? So that is the objective. That's great, fantastic. So for our next speaker, Arita, are you here? Arita Gunabu,
Yes.
okay, from the program officer and lead for the SIDS Lighthouse initiative at Arena. So LHI, that sounds like something we really would love to hear about. So please, Arena.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, James, and the Island Innovation team for the opportunity to share insights on refinancing for small island developing states. Let me start off by what IRENA is doing in this space. We've been facilitating the deployment of renewables through the SEEDS Lighthouses initiative, which was launched in 2014. In spite of the challenges, we have noted that the uptake of renewables have been impressive. In spite of the natural disasters, the global crisis, it continues to increase steadily. It sits at 6.5 gigawatt, with the Pacific and ACE accounting for about 1 gigawatt, and the Caribbean accounting for over 4 gigawatt. So not all is lost. And we see that governments and relevant stakeholders are very committed to making change in this space. So for IRENA, as the facilitator of the lighthouses, we listen closely to the SEEDS needs and priorities, as often highlighted in our ministerial that is held yearly in the margins of the IRENA Assembly, where they're asking for more implementation and finance. And to this effect, we are committed to move from technical assistance to facilitate project bankability, and ensuring that these projects are matched to the appropriate financing for its implementation. We have also been supporting SEEDS. Just over the last year, we've supported 16 SEEDS in all the 3 regions in terms of technical analysis, readiness and resource assessment, capacity building, project development, and strengthening bankability of these projects. Targeted capacity building included developing bankable power purchase agreements. It's also important that as we look at renewables, we couple it with energy efficiency. So we've, targeting to strengthen capacity in energy audit and management, addressing the low-hanging fruit, and looking at developing bankable project proposals. And we've partnered with regional organizations such as PICRI and SPC, Pacific Power Association, and also World Bank, and very recently last month with the GCF, where we are looking at 4 to 5 project proposals. We also have platforms for project facilitation support, namely the Climate Investment Platform, and we have facilitated support for a few Pacific SEEDS, and also match them to some appropriate financing in the margins of G20 meeting that was held in Bali. And we are planning another similar event in the Caribbean in June. So if there are stakeholders listening in from the Caribbean, keep a lookout for that. And we also hope to replicate this in the Pacific at the end of the year. We have a financing facility, the Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Facility, but we note that the terms and conditions might not be suitable for SEEDS, given the project size and scale, as the previous speakers have spoken to. So to meet the needs of SEEDS, IRENA is garnering support and partnerships to a 1 billion COP28 facility on empowering lives and livelihoods. We are looking at connecting people, lives, livelihoods through energy solutions in agri-food and health sectors. And then we will look at other end-use sectors. For this, we have a side event in the margins of the upcoming Energy and Transport Ministerial in Vanuatu in May. So if you're listening in from the Pacific, we hope to see you in Vanuatu. And I think it's also important that, even if finance is coming in slow, we should not stop as Island Innovation and others that have this kind of platforms, that we continue to put the message across, showcasing our needs, the benefits, even the lessons learned of RE interventions and energy interventions in seeds, and how it's positively impacting our communities and also highlighting the socioeconomic benefits. So to this effect, I will ask if James or the one from the team can play the video, a very short video, 1 minute, just to show the human impacts of RE in a few of the seeds. Thank you.
We are contributing little to the impact of climate change, but we are the ones suffering the most.
Islands can actually show the way and help the bigger countries to work together to achieve those global goals.
Since solar power has been installed at my school, I have realized it is not only for reducing bills, but it is also helping to fight against global warming.
Freshwater is concerned within St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Since the introduction of the plant, we have almost zero complaints now during the dry season.
Samoa is still heavily dependent on imported fossil fuels. The country is making efforts to transition to sustainable energy.
We've prioritized placing women at the center of energy transition policies to empower the communities, to generate employment and new business opportunities.
We need funds and we need support.
Come work with us and you will see results.
If we don't contain global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels, this planet ain't gonna be worth living in.
Thank you, and back to you, moderator.
Wonderful. The last but not least, I'm kind of skipping through for some reasons, but Velme Kasnawaga is our next speaker. Are you here?
Thank you,
Can
Alan.
you hear me? Oh, there you go. There you are. Please. Have you presented already?
No, but I'll probably just respond to some of the points that was brought up. So I've sort of prepared something just to respond to it. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whoever's I'm connecting from Suba. So basically, I just want to talk about or respond to some of the points that was brought up. So one is in terms of the need to aggregate demand. So when you look at the economy of scales, if you look at renewable energy projects in Fiji or Tuvalu or Kiribati, the market is quite small. So there's got to be some kind of aggregator to do that. And then, for example, we've been talking about electricity. But if you look at energy utilization of fossil fuel, if you look at a big component is maritime transport. So that's a big component that we need to address. If you look at the national determined contribution of the Pacific, it's very much looking at just electricity generation. So one is the component of maritime transport that we need to look at. And of course, to do that, we need to look at the aggregating of demand. And that is something that from us at the Pacific Island Development Forum, we've been looking at the Blue Shipping Initiative. Just to jump back into the private sector. So the private sector in terms of energy, currently it's because of the subsidy or the subsidization of, for example, solar. The market is very sterilized. So there's got to be some kind of the commoditization of, say, for example, to look at a market mechanism. That should be some of the enabling policy. So unfortunately, we haven't invited the governments because these are the ones that will set the enabling policy. that dictates to the private sector and then investment. Case point in Fiji, when they looked at the moving of electric mobility, they looked at hybrid. So the government put a policy, a very positive policy, which saw the flooding of the market. And those are some of the things that the government needs to look at. Coming back in terms of energy access, if you look at the Pacific, women is very energy poor. If you look at Melanesia with 5.1 million population, women have very little, they're very, because of the policies that does not enable the participation or the equitable access to energy. Because when you're looking at energy, you're building resilience. So you're building resilience, you're also looking at security. So these are some of the things that are interlinked. So when you look at COVID-19, the impacts of COVID-19, the need for, for healthcare to sort of, so those are the challenges. But there are some positive that has happened in the recent times. If you look at mini grids and microgrid solar system, if you look at Vanuatu and look at Solomon Islands, they've been able to have an incremental increase in terms of access. 3 years back, they had about 20% access to electricity. So the energy penetration has improved to around about 30 and 40%. PNG, there's a big work to be done. So that's in terms of the policy. So just to come back in terms of the government setting the positive enabling environment, and then the aggregating of projects to look at the de-risking component for the private sector. Thank you.
Excellent. I thought it was very poignant during the opening when the governor of Guam mentioned the fact that even as a U.S. protectorate, as some, one of the largest countries and the most powerful countries in the world, that she's unable to get funding from the Asian Development Bank for various reasons. That's a shame, because it ought to be the financing of these very important renewable projects needs to be accessible, but also we're working as change makers who really would want our island to be self-sustaining. And I think there's definitely a possibility. I just think that as we go along, as we meet up with resistance or certain sort of pushbacks that are really very unwise, and so hopefully this session and what the this whole Island Finance Forum is providing is for us to kind of come together and be as one as solution providers, and so that we can be helpful, right? Instead of running into a situation where we're very much drawn into issues that are not going to help our people, not going to help our island. So we see a lot of activity in the chat box, which is fantastic. We see folks from Solomon all over. This is a very hot topic, which it should be. We are, we're actually doing very well on time. We got 20 more minutes. I'm going to go to Q&A. I see someone who, Badari from Micronesia. My ex-boss, March Fong Yu, was ambassador to Micronesia. So I'm quite fond of the federal states of Micronesia from that standpoint. I've been there many times. Mr. Badari is leading an effort to pursue IPPs on these small remote islands. So that's fantastic. And the RE penetration improves when coupled with battery storage, obviously. Hopefully in the future, we get help with some hydrogen storage. However, with the current prices, BSS expenses hit the viability of renewable energy in remote small islands. So the question to the panels, how do we ensure that the VGF prior to bidding, and then, or does the bidding happen on the VGF level after fixing the desired tariff, right? So where can they source the VGFs and quickly, right? So yeah, I mean, I'll let the panel go on it, but one of the things that we're doing with hydrogen power is to try to sort of design feasible microgrids, and we're going to work on the island side of this in Hainan in a couple of months to try to do smaller communities or cities or villages, and maybe we can share those insights. Any thoughts on the question from Mr. Bahadri? Anybody? Pricing and sourcing. Just start. So one of the things I can think of is, I was just at the fuel cell expo in Japan in March, biggest fuel cell, actually clean energy, renewable energy expo in the world. And one of the things I've noticed is that, right, obviously coming, being in China, and as I walk through the halls for the solar panels, right, and a lot of the manufacturers are in China, so which is good, meaning that we need to, from a sourcing standpoint, we need to make sure that there's a very open and very transparent pricing on, right, whether it's through obviously a bidding process, but at least know that we're going to be able to get very inexpensive but efficient solar panels. So that type of sourcing, I think, is already happening, but how can we make sure that maybe from a global island perspective to sort of group buy this stuff, I'm just thinking, we could cluster together and come in and do some do some purchases and use our leverage as islands to do that. So any thoughts in terms of how we could actually lower the price of all the hardware that's involved?
Just some of the work that's been done in the region. So International Solar Alliance. So they're doing some work in terms of aggregating. So they got a program that they're looking at because of they're looking at getting everybody in one basket. But with the recent COVID-19 and the problem in terms of the debt level, so that's so there's some kind of financing that needs to be looked at. So you look at debt swap, or if you look at So one of the things that they're looking at is in terms of also, they're looking at like solar pumps. They're looking at going right down to support agriculture, to look at health, and then to sort of put that together and then do a procurement. About 20 years ago, the Pacific tried to do in terms of petroleum. So that's something that they're revisiting that is now happening.
Alan, just as a comment and follow up, I think that one of the opportunities is that we talk about the small scale, and it may be seen to be counterproductive, but if we can in fact increase the electricity demand and make the projects larger by having productive uses attached to them, and William has talked about that around transport, and clearly transport is an enormous user of diesel. About 75% of the diesel that comes into the Pacific is used for marine transport. So substitution with things such as green hydrogen, those sorts of approaches would increase the electricity demand domestically. They might make the scale more appropriate. And, while it's early days for some of these new technologies, starting to transition with, mixes of, say, green hydrogen and diesel and empowering some of the vessels, that sort of thing. There are a number of opportunities. And I think that, the aggregation is important, but also perhaps trying to influence the productive opportunities on island to give better sustainability across the board, would be an important thing, and could perhaps help leverage finance in, because the scale looks more attractive.
Yeah. Just following on that. Thanks, Mike. Just following on that, I think one of the key things that we have to be cognizant of that, what drives cost down is understanding standardization and being able to leverage off designs and equipment that has been used elsewhere in the world. So let's not try and reinvent the wheel every single time and make something that is specific for the island. And I think that's where, when you talk to organizations like PCRI, as developers are looking at projects in these hard to reach countries, as we should be able to come back to a knowledge depository like PCRI and understand what sort of designs, what sort of equipment is being used elsewhere in the world that we can piggyback on. Because it's easy when you're in a far-flung island to think you're the first one who's done a design, and not taking into account learnings that have been done elsewhere in the world that you can also leverage, not just the learnings, but the effectively cost decreases on that equipment.
Excellent point. What I'm doing with hydrogen power with this application design center is to share data and information on how we're going to be able to deploy microgrids in different locations. So one challenge, I think James, one of the things that we could do, just as a suggestion for island innovation, not just on the finance portion of this, but obviously very important. We'll get to that specific area of solving problems of financing. But when we're talking about, actually, that was a great point, is that the front end of the requirements of what that local, we talked about, I think Dr. Allen talked about volumetric sort of acquisition or purchasing, but the actual localized grid to be able to, or idea innovation that actually will be able to help certain size islands, right? So I think those proof of concepts and ideas and modeling has to be shared. This has to be an open source type of environment, not kept to larger countries, not kept to wealthy locations, right? We need to share this in the sense that let young people get involved with this. I would bequest that we go and work with all the schools, the engineering schools, to get them involved, right? Maybe a competition, maybe an island renewable energy competition among schools with students helping to solve those problems. So I think I'm willing to do that. I teach at Fudan University, and I'm willing to do that. So let's do this. Please share your contacts, any contacts. Obviously, we'll put the contacts for the panels out there for everyone. But we also use Slack at Island Innovation. Please get on the Slack channel. This is just the beginning, obviously, of the not just a discussion, but a push towards solutions that is viable, right? That is going to be affordable, right? We talk about something that is really not within reach because of our localized budgets, then what's the point, right? So let's be sensible, do the sharing as much as we can in terms of what are the solutions for renewable? How are different islands doing it? We'll just cluster and pull together the information. So James, I'll work with James and Island Innovation to do that, to sort of come up with something that is going to be usable as a resource. Okay, we'll do that as a takeaway from this session. Another question.
Ellen, if I can just,
actually a lot of questions.
Ellen,
go ahead.
If I can just come in quickly on Om's question regarding the battery storage. I believe he's asking about the viability gap funding, which is grant-based. And I think, well, based on some of the RE projects I've done, for example, the Marshall Islands, we ensured that we secured the VGF before the bidding. And we worked with other financing, I think it was a GF, that provided this grant for us, so that it could address this gap. But I don't know for FSM whether that is available for them, but I believe that the government should take the lead in this, in talking with the different funding facilities that are available, so that they ensure that they have all the necessary funding that is needed for the project, and also to ensure sustainability. Battery storage and green hydrogen, as Mike has alluded to, these are emerging technologies. Oceans, we are surrounded by oceans in the islands, but looking at the sustainability of these technologies and how we ensure that we minimize the impacts on the environment for batteries, for used batteries. How do we get them off the island? How do we look at recycling them? So it needs to be a circular, a kind of approach where we look at it in totality rather than in isolation. I think also that there's some financing institutions in China that were reaching out to the small island developing states. Maybe I can provide some context to and there, South-South cooperation is another option to look at. India has been funding some of the projects and programs, as Vili had mentioned, ISA. So there are lots of options available. And like you said it right, Alan, it's about sharing, ensuring that this information is disseminated to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. That was very, very enlightening. Let me just take one more question from our Q&A. There was one from this is from Jessup, and Jessup says, "What are the future benefits for islands in Africa? How will there be benefits to islands in Africa, just as what Arena and others are doing for islands in the Pacific or elsewhere?" It's a question about, are we, are we spreading the love around? Are we spreading the goods around, or is it going to be concentrated in certain areas? Anybody with a more global scope on this in terms of what is coming up in terms of potential financing schemes for renewable for islands? Anyone on the panel?
Yeah.
Please.
Hi, Alan. I think that I'd like to reverse the question, which is that there is actually quite a bit of funding available, but it's untapped, because there is a disconnect between many of the funders, be they debt and equity, sometimes looking for big tickets or not aware of the island opportunities, as well as grant programs who have these sometimes very complex procedures that you need to go through. That is exactly what we help island developers and island companies with, and have been doing so rather successfully, because it's not that the projects with the issues of small scale and the connectivity are not feasible. You just need to know how others have solved the problem in other places, and then apply that solution, of course, with all the adjustments specific to the project. And then you can make projects happen. We've done so in Africa, in the Caribbean, and soon in the Pacific too. So obviously there is more need for refined financing, and in more mature places, like by now many African states, we see that happening. But with the pretty limited supply of capital that we see now for island states, a lot can be done. And the more we build successes, the easier it will be for other financiers to also make funds available for those places. So it's also a matter of making things happen, even if it is at a small scale, and like you do, Alan, in a sort of pilot scale or testing context, to make sure that financiers, be they donors, be they debt providers, be they equity investors like impact funds, the more they get interested in island states. Thank you.
From Irina, in short, yes, we are an international organization. Mike had alluded to earlier. It's just that this session focuses on islands. That's why we are speaking about the islands. I'll be happy to connect, I think it was Jesu that asked that question, John, to our regional offices for Africa or any other region. And we have different programs for the membership. Thanks.
Excellent. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I want to give the panelists a final takeaway in terms of giving us the, I would say it's almost a pep talk on that it's not, it's just the beginning. There's still a lot of work to do to make sure that islands are self-sustainable in terms of energy consumption and usage. So it's going to take a lot of work among us to work together to reach that objective of zero carbon and self-sustainability, right? So that we're fully sustainable. Yeah, can the panel just the pause, and no, why don't we start with the lady? Would you give us a final word on what you think is going to happen rest of 2023, and what's your vision about how we can make this finance part of renewable work for islands?
Thank you, Alan. Okay, from IRENA, we remain available to support SEEDS as we continue to do so in all the regions through the SEEDS Lighthouses initiative. We are engaging with philanthropies, non-traditional partners, and we've gone down to the outside of like parliamentarians, youths, the community. And try to ensure that everyone is on the same page, and lastly, just ensuring that we work in sync with all our partners. We are not duplicating efforts. We talk to each other, and that is something IRENA strives to do. The financing is there. Maybe the challenge remains of tapping into this, but nothing is impossible if we do work together. Thanks.
Yep. Next, Paul's. Any just a final word?
All right, I can go. Look, I just wanted to say, I think looking forward from where we are now, I think it's actually quite heartening that we're actually having conversations like this that we probably haven't had in the past, but we're having conversations about this where we actually have viable solutions to drive renewables in the Pacific, where they've now become cost competitive. And there's actually, significant desire from financiers, both locally, internationally, to want to invest in renewable energy projects. What we have to do is, like most things, is bridge the gap between, the capability and what investors want, so that they can reduce their risk perception of the projects that we're looking to, and we are well on the way to doing that. So I would say to everyone, we are in a very good place in terms of the potential. Now, we all have a role to play in realizing that potential. It's the first time where we actually have both capital, projects, and a desire, and a global desire to transition from fossil fuels. It's just really about putting shoulder to the wheel and getting on with the job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Good. And Paul, the other Paul.
Yeah, very briefly, I think this is a very creative and well-informed audience to discuss the topics that are at play at the island states. And I see actually that we can do a two-way approach, which is on the one side, discuss all the topics in the fora with IRENA and everybody else and make more resources available. And at the same time, follow up on the existing leads that we, for example, see that we advise on that can be done and that, for example, Chemco could invest in. And I've just shared my website and our applications tab, so you can see what kind of services that we provide and how you can apply. I think there's more possible than you might think, and this forum is very useful in making that happen. Thank you.
Maybe
yeah. Just the opportunity. The Pacific has always been sort of handed down in terms of technology, in terms of the Pacific or the islands. I think the opportunity is there in terms to leapfrog because of the size, so we can do that. And then I'm very excited with the the potential of hydrogen and all that. So, yep, good work.
Dr. Allen.
Thanks, Alan. I think the thing is to think very broadly and think quite aggressively. Think positively about what we can achieve. That we are looking for sustainability, and it's not just electricity investments. It's the productive uses, and I think there's lots of opportunity to do that. And to, as Willem has said, we need to address the transportation issue, which if we start to open that up and start to look at some alternative fuels that could be indigenous, I think there's some very good opportunities there. And thanks to everybody for a very interesting discussion, and recommend that you look closely at the work that Arietta and Irina are doing, because there's a lot of leadership out of that, and that's a very good forum. You don't need to create a new forum to exchange ideas. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much to our distinguished panel of experts and really change makers, I think, right? So let's work together. I think the follow-up, James, I think with the Island Innovation team is let's start to look at how we can aggregate some solutions that maybe just as a way to kind of continue the conversation about solutions, about pricing, about sourcing. And then the finance portion definitely takes a lot more. I think we need to be more innovative in terms of how we're going to be able to raise money to actually not just from public maybe bonds or some type of traditional way of doing, but something maybe innovative. We really need to think about this because it is getting harder to get financing. But luckily we are going towards carbon zero and decarbonization. So there are a lot of mandates, but still we need to work hard. Anyway, thank you very much to our guests, and thank you for your participation in this year's Island Finance Forum 2023, and live from Shanghai. We got a whole group that's actually here, but not listening to us, which is a shame. But anyway, thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of the forum, and we hope to really see you soon, and let's do some work.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen, for moderating, and thank you for all the respected speakers. We are really honored to have you here today. I'd like to announce the next session. It's going to be called the Blue Economy and Conservation Finance. The time is 7 a.m. New York time or 12 o'clock London time. I'll be surely there, as Island Innovation has an upcoming event related to blue economy. It will be on the 22nd and 23rd in June in Madeira, a Blue Economy Investment Forum. I just dropped the link in the chat so you are aware.
Thank you so much.
Please follow us on Instagram @_Island Innovation, and looking forward to see you in other sessions. Have a great day.
Thank you.